And we're back. All right, so we're going to talk about factoring. So with factoring, you always want to make sure for the first thing is that it's in that ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. This is called standard form. Yes, my handwriting is on fire today. This is standard form. Okay, so with that being said, we don't have a c term in here. Okay, notice how we've got that x squared matches up with that ax squared, 18x matches up with that bx, and then we've got plus 0, which would be our c term, right? Okay, so we've been talking about the greatest common factor. So let's think through. 3x squared and 18x. What factors do they have in common? Well, let's list out factors of 3x squared. So factors of 3x are going to be 1 and 3, and x, and that's it. That's all you got. Okay, for 18x, we're going to think through factors. We've got 1x and 18x, or 18, 3x and 6, and we've got 2x, and I'm sorry, these are smushed together, and 9. All right, so out of these, what do they have in common? What is the greatest common factor that they share? Well, the biggest factor that 3x squared has is 3x. Well, for 18x, is there a 3x in their factors? Yeah. Okay, so that is going to be my GCF, or my greatest common factor. GC, my greatest common factor. Okay, so when I pull that out, I'm going to take these and divide it by 3x. So I'm going to take 3x squared and divide it by 3x. And I'm going to take 18x and divide it by 3x. Okay, so I'm going to pull those out. I'm going to put 3x out in the front. So 3x squared divided by 3x. Well, 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. And x squared divided by x is going to give me just 1x. 18x divided by 3x. Well, let's think. 18 divided by 3 is 6. Okay. And x divided by x, those will cancel out. So I'm going to have just 6 left over. So notice how I wrote it down here. I have what I divided by out here in the front, so that's my GCF. And then whatever's left over after I divide by 3x is left inside the parentheses. So this is factoring by GCF. Okay? And normally we're going to do this if we don't have a C term. This will probably be the easiest way to do it. All right, so now we actually jump into factoring with all of the terms of the standard form actually included, okay? And so what I mean by that is if we look at this function, it's already in standard form. So it's already in that ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 form, okay? So it's already in standard form, which is fantastic. So now we're going to use something called the big X or the diamond, depending on what your teacher calls it. And we're going to have the top portion of this be A times C, and the bottom portion of this be B. Okay, so the top portion is going to be A times C. Well, what's my A term here? Okay, A term is going to be 1. Notice how there's nothing out in front of this x squared? Well, if there's nothing out in front of it, then we assume that it's a 1. Okay, so my A term is going to be 1. What is my C term? My C term is over here at the end. It doesn't have an x attached to it. It's negative 12. Okay, so my C term is going to be negative 12. So what is 1 multiplied by negative 12? That's going to give me negative 12. So A times C is 1 times negative 12. That's giving me negative 12 right here. B term is going to be right here. It's the number that's attached to just the x. So B term is going to be negative 4. So I'm going to bring that down here. All right. So we've got 2 portions of this big X, but now we've got to figure out what factors make this true. All right, so we've got to sit here and think, what are factors of negative 12? Well, let's list those out. So factors of negative 12. Let's do factors of negative 12. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. And we could say 1 times -3 or -12, 2 times -6, or vice versa. All right. Now our job is to take, okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take these numbers and we're going to try to smush them together or add them together to create -4. Okay, is there any possible way that I can take 1 and 12 and make it -4? No, so those are not going to be my factors. Is there any possible way to take 3 and 4 and add them together and make -4? No, so those are not going to be my factors. Is there a way to take 2 and 6? Well, yeah, if I make the 6 negative. So 2 and -6 will make that happen. 2 and -6 will make that happen. Is 2 times -6 -12? Yes, and if we add 2 and -6 together, that's going to give me -4. So just keep in mind, it's got to multiply together to give you A times C, but it's going to add together to give you B. So I always put a plus sign on the bottom and a multiplication symbol on the top so that I can keep those straight. Okay? All right, so now that we've got our factors, we're going to do our box. Now, your teacher might not use the box, but just for all intents and purposes, hang tight, sit with me. All right? So on this first box up here in the top, you're going to take your first term. So this x squared right here is going to go in this box. So I'm going to do this in awesome colors. X squared. Okay? In this last box, you're going to take your last term that was in the original equation and put it in that box. So we're going to put that in blue. We're going to have -12. In these two boxes right here and here, those factors that we just found, we're going to slap an X on to both of them and put them inside the boxes. It does not matter which one you put in which box. It doesn't matter. So we can put 2x right here and -6x right here. Notice how if I add these two together, I'm going to get -4x. So everything that's inside the box has to add up to equal your original equation. Now we're going to take the GCF of our boxes straight up and down and side to side. So first I'm going to do straight up and down. So what is the greatest common factor of x squared and -6x? Well, the greatest common factor is going to be x. So I'm going to put an x on the outside of this box. So what is the greatest common factor of 2x and -12? The greatest common factor is 2. So I'm going to put a 2 right here. Now remember, we pulled out the greatest common factor to be a positive 2. So since it's a positive 2, we're going to put a plus sign in between this x and 2. Now we're going to take the greatest common factor of the rows. So what's the greatest common factor of x squared and 2x? Well, that's going to give me x. So I'm going to put that outside my box. And then what's the greatest common factor of -6x and -12? Well, that's going to give me -6. One quick way to check and make sure that you did all of your boxes right is if I took this number and multiplied it together, or this term and this term and multiplied it together, I should get what's inside the box. So x times x would give me x squared. Let's check the other boxes. 2 times x gives me 2x. X times -6 gives me -6x. -6 times 2 gives me -12. So you always want to make sure that your terms on the outside, if you multiply them together, it makes what's on the inside. Okay, so that's just a quick check. So we're going to write this out in factored form. We've got x plus 2 and x minus 6. Notice how I put those parentheses around my factors. It's just to give them a little bit extra love, you know. So notice also that these numbers right here are the same ones that I got up here in this little diamond. The reason why that's the same is because my coefficient, that means the number that's in front of my leading term, is 1. So A equals 1. If A equals 1, you can stop at this point and write it out in factored form. But if A does not equal 1, you are going to have to do the box method. All right, so go ahead and take a moment and try this one on your own. And then you're going to check your work in about 5 seconds. So go ahead and pause this video and then check your work. All right, so let's take a look at it. Hopefully you got as your final answer x minus 6 times x plus 1. And if you did not, let's check your work. So you should have done your diamond. So a times c, that's this blue, which is going to be that 1. Remember, if there's nothing written there, it's assuming that it's a 1. This will change in just a second, so make sure that you keep aware of that. So 1 times negative 6 is going to give me negative 6, and b is going to be negative 5. My two factors that'll make that happen are negative 6 and 1. Now I'm going to put this in my handy dandy box. Remember, first term goes in the first box, last term goes in the last box. And these two terms are going to slap on an X, and they're going to go in these diagonal boxes. We're going to take the GCF of the rows and columns, and we're going to make sure that if we multiply the two things that are adjacent to the box, then that'll give us what's inside the box. Oftentimes, this is called the area model because you take the length and the width, and you get what's in the inside. So then you're going to have this x minus 6 and x plus 1 as your final answer. And to check your work, you can multiply this back out. So you can multiply x times x. That'll give you x squared. X times 1, that'll give you 1x, etc.